Right. Well, speaking of made-up human rights, the entire conservative wing of the American right decided to have an infight last weekend over whether or not you can buy a baby. This was the surrogacy debate reignited again, and it's opened an interesting fissure between the libertarian and liberal side who think that the free exchange of goods and services extends to babies, and then the Christian nationalists who are going off the concept of, well, we shouldn't ask children to make sacrifices for what their prospective parents might want. And so I thought I'd just talk about this because it's an internal discourse, but it will be one of those fault lines along which the anti-woke coalition decides to fracture. I mean, we spoke about this before in our Rumble live stream about James Lindsay and liberalism and Christian nationalism. But this is something that, and if you subscribe to the website for as little as £5 a month, you can get lots of our premium content that we all discussed in our liberalism debate series. And I pulled up this part, not just for the amazing thumbnail of Josh's face superimposed over a nuclear explosion, but because we couldn't disentangle a contention here, and that is that liberalism's belief in progress, moral and technological, means that it doesn't really have an argument against the expansion of technologies that proclaim to be making human beings more free and equal, even if they have downsides. So this is the same thing for the gender debate, which we cannot get into because we're on YouTube, but this is also the same thing for surrogacy, where certain people cannot have children via lifestyle habits.
Well, I was going to say, they could if they adopted a different lifestyle.
Yes. They cannot have children biologically, and therefore...
Do we have to say a different lifestyle? Because we can't just say the gay word?
Well, yeah, but that is true.
If they chose to have normal sex instead of butt sex, they could have children.
Yeah, I don't think that's a judgment either. I think that's fine to say. It's just
I mean, people did it back in the day. Didn't Oscar Wilde had children, didn't he?
Sorry, you're saying they should lie back and think of men.
I mean, if it helps.
Anyway, point being, juvenile, point being, they feel entitled to have all of law and technology bend over backwards to facilitate their desire to have children in spite of their sexual preferences. And this is something that people are objecting to because they're saying, actually, a child should not have to conform to your lifestyle. You should, if you want a child, change your personal ways because it has downsides for the children. Now, this all came about.
What does that mean, though? Like the gay guy should stop being gay?
No, it just means that if you're
gay, you can't have kids.
Well, yeah, biologically speaking, yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Just trying to understand.
That's all right. No, we'll also go into some of the reasons why. But so Guy Benson, who is a Fox News radio host, announced that the surrogate that he and his husband hired they commissioned her to carry their baby, like a gestational chamber, had given birth. And there were lots of people celebrating this, like Tom Harwood and the like. And Katie Faust, who I'm speaking to soon, she works for Them Before Us, not Us for Them, it's a different group, which is a self-styled children's rights advocacy group. She decided to really kick the hornet's nest with this one because she said, conservatives, kids need mums and dads, stop trafficking children, don't erase women. Gay conservative pays for intentionally motherless baby. Conservatives, OMG, congratulations. You can see how these positions might not be reconciled within the American right. Don't think anyone's going to settle this anytime soon. So then a gay Newsmax contributor decided to wade in with a photo of a black woman who carried two gay men's children, and he made the following argument. This is human trafficking. No one is participating against their will. Babies are not for sale. Okay, so you're against adoption too. This is unnatural. Not everything that is natural is deemed morally right. It comes naturally to us to lie, cheat, and steal. Does that mean we should partake in that activity because it's natural? It's against God's plan. Religion is by far the weakest argument you can make when trying to take away people's rights. Pearl-clutching theocratic conservatives are what ruin our party. Regardless what the internet mob says, I can't wait to eventually be a father, and I will love that child better than most straight parents. Right. I'm going to skip over the religious arguments because we can leave that till a bit later because the Christian nationalists waded into this one. But the top one I just think is straw manning. No one is participating against their will. Okay. Even in hypothetical, totally consensual, non-monetarily coercive surrogacy, where the woman's really rich and just up for it, she wants to carry another baby. And both the gay parents want it. Is there a party here involved that might, when they grow up, have problems with this?
I mean, let's be perfectly honest here. Anybody who knows anything about childbirth and pregnancy in women knows that the baby will have a problem with it anyway, because one of the first things that happens as the baby is developing in the womb is it gets used to the mother's heartbeat and it gets used to the mother's voice. These two things are incredibly important for a child to be able to develop properly and not be under great immense stress when being born, because being born, pretty traumatic for a thing to happen to anybody. You're being crushed out of a very small space when you were previously all nice and cozy and warm in amniotic fluid the whole time. And so one of the first things they encourage is skin-to-skin contact with the mother, and for the mother to speak to the baby, because that is going to calm the baby down. That kind of bond is very, very important, and not the sort of thing that you're going to get if you immediately take the baby away from the mother. Not to ignore the fact that the mother will also, having developed and carried a life within her for 9 months, will have also developed an immense attachment a lot of the time.
Not just the attachment.
And it's natural. It's what you're biologically supposed to do. It's what your instincts kick in and tell you to do.
When they've examined the bodies of women who have had children, they found DNA that's only possible to come from their baby still within their body, and they act like stem cells that slowly repair the mother's body over time. So she's literally still got traces of her baby within her. She's been flooded with hormones to keep herself connected to this child. And so both the child and the mother cannot rationalize away that connection on the grounds of, well, I consented to give the baby up. And, well, my mum decided to rationally consent to hand me over to these two new adoptive same-sex parents. That's just not how that works.
You're also risking massively increased cortisol levels in the baby from a very young age, which is going to lead to developmental issues and also emotional attachment issues as they get older.
Yeah.
That's one of the things they do these days, which is they tell you, back in the day, they used to tell you to let the babies cry because it was seen as over-coddling them. You might make them too dependent and not independent as they get older. They've found that cortisol levels increase massively when you adopt that style of parenting, which actually makes them less independent when they get older. So you're supposed to avoid that kind of stress on the baby as much as possible because it leads to emotional issues.
That persists throughout adolescence. It becomes the new bar for elevated cortisol levels throughout their teenage years. Josh and I covered this in our examination of how daycare is going to destroy the West, because if you part an infant from their mother from the early years of childhood and hand them off to some state-funded employee who's got 15 other kids to look after, turns out the baby throughout their development feels really stressed, and we wonder where all these mental illnesses are coming from. Not good. Also, babies are not for sale. Okay, you're against adoption too. No, I am against the purposeful commissioning and engineering of a child to grow up without their parents. Adoption is making the best of a tragic situation. Surrogacy is designing it so that a child will always be without one of their parents, particularly the biological mother. Not a good thing. Okay, that's it. Should be fairly simple.
Hi folks, sorry to interrupt the video, but I just wanted to announce that we have a new line of merch in our merch store. The merch store was kind of empty for a while, and so I thought, right, okay, what do I actually want on shirts? And so I just went through some of the most epic and true things that I think that historical people have said, and John managed to make an amazing set of merch out of it. And we will have extra things coming in the store, such as posters for these to go on. Thanks for everything, folks. Now back to the video.
So this was another clip as well. I just wanted to play this because there is the more benevolent framing that the prior man tried to argue. These fellas are a couple. One of the guys is from Made in Chelsea, which I've never watched. I had to look this up. And this is his husband. And they welcomed their son Apollo Magnus Obi and a daughter Kazima Emily Bex, presumably named after their Skyrim characters, who they had via a surrogate. And they were born prematurely at 31 weeks. So they were in neonatal intensive care for quite some time. So you can imagine that these kids might grow up to have some kind of issues. I really hope not, but a bit of a gamble. Just listen to how they talk about the woman that they paid to have their child. Little bit disturbing.
How much does it cost?
We probably spent £250,000.
It's the first time we were meant to go to America, and then we couldn't because of COVID. So we ended up working with a clinic in San Diego, and we went to Mexico.
I mean, we were slightly knobheads at this reason as well, because I wanted to make sure that we knew who the egg donor was. I wanted them to be super fit. You go to the bar and you go, I'm going to procreate that person, right? That's your choice as a human. I wanted to find someone that I know is going to be absolute smoke show. Basically, we chose Emily Bratanowski.
So there's a company in LA, and they have a company that basically is supermodels who are Ivy League educated. So they have to have gone to like Brown, Columbia.
No.
Owen went to Columbia.
That feels a bit strange, is it not? Or no?
It's a bit prostitute-y, isn't it?
I think it's quite fabulous, but the eggs were terribly expensive. But we got a Brazilian supermodel.
Okay, so somebody goes to Ivy League education. This is a presumption on my part, but I think it explains why they would be doing this in the first place. Is unable to find steady employment afterwards and figures, well, I've got good qualifications, so this is how I'm going to have to make money because otherwise I'm screwed.
Yeah, it's financially predatory. They indebt you by going to school with really high American loans, and then they turn you into a gestational prostitute to pay them off.
You right there, Callum?
Yeah, I don't like this.
It's grotesque, isn't it?
This is really sick.
Yeah, and this, for all the audience who don't share my religious proclivities, Callum isn't, well...
Yeah, I'm an atheist. It's
yeah.
it's not a question of religion. It's just, why would you do any of this? Just generally? I know you want the kid to have your DNA, but like, what the hell, man?
But that's it. It's a vanity project. They believe that despite their personal choices, they should still have the same equal outcomes to anyone else who didn't make those choices. Therefore, the law and technology should bend over backwards to facilitate their will. Whatever happens to the baby, be damned.
I saw apparently because of the NHS, the British government is currently debating about whether or not we should pay gay guys to be able to do this. Which I'm not really sure how that works, because let's say you got 100 gay guys.
Gay man has a right to a woman's womb.
Yeah,
but let's give right to a child.
Let's say you got 100 gay guys and want a baby, and 80 women who have even signed up to do that. What happens to the last 20 gay guys? Like, if you end up with a deficit, there can't be it. It gets worse every year.
We could reintroduce the Colosseum.
No, I just
We're having tryouts.
if you start saying it's a right, like, well, then this is the problem with all rights. So I don't want to get into that, but
it ratchets up towards extra body gestation. It starts manufacturing consent for that baby factory pod thing that everyone was seeing. Do you remember that Carl showed you in the Cyberpunk dystopia where it looks like the Matrix?
Yeah, I mean, some people in the chat are like, why not just put it in a pod at this point? And if they could, I guess they would, but...
Because you need skin-to-skin contact and the baby's ability to listen to the
No,
mother's
let's say
heartbeat.
scientifically you could. Let's just say we found some
I
way.
somehow doubt that.
No, but there's part
Wait until they can do womb transplants.
I know, but let's just assume for a moment, because that's the thing. Like, it's not even about the relationships here. Is if you say, okay, we could magically put a baby in a pod and then birth them out, and then the gay guys could have them, or even a straight couple. Something about you just thinks that's wrong, right?
Yep, absolutely.
It's just kind of gross.
Discuss sensitivity is an appropriate moral bulwark, actually.
Well, yeah, this is why people point out the failure of consent-based morality, and to head off, because I saw Auron got a load of people shrieking at him over the weekend when he said as much. Consent-based morality does not mean that consent does not matter if you're criticizing it. Obviously, consent matters. The point of consent-based morality is it's this paradigm where everybody believes that just because two people agree to it means that it's a good thing, because on that you can justify the German cannibal. Well, the guy he killed and ate agreed to it because he was suicidal, so therefore it's perfectly moral. No, it's. I don't think it's
Or
moral.
Vosh.
That's the example
Vosh is
I
like
used in my
moral
article
people.
for it.
You got Vosh or whatever is like the horse wants it. I don't care.
You're disgusting for
Even
even
if we
doing
agree,
it in the first
I'm
place.
not interested.
Like, do you want to spend your time after you know that the German cannibal has eaten somebody? Do you want to spend your time with that person? Do you want to spend your time with Vosh after you know he's been lusting after
Or Cenk Uygur.
particularly salacious horses? Is that what you want to do? Would you trust that person around your own children?
This is the Jonathan Haidt example of whether or not disgust is a moral foundation for you, of where, okay, a man goes out and he buys a chicken. Nobody sees the man buy the chicken. Nobody sees the man cook the chicken. Nobody sees the man having sex
not
with the
this
chicken.
one.
Do you hate the man for having sex with the chicken?
I mean,
Is everyone consented, right?
As soon as I find out,
Hang on, he had sex with the cooked chicken.
yeah, no,
Yes.
He cooked it and then had sex.
Well,
with
he
No,
would,
no, I thought-
the other way, you get salmonella, Callum. Don't be disgusted.
No,
I
of
was gonna say,
course, yeah, that would be weird.
I
Hygiene
thought it's
first.
right. I don't want to linger on this too much, but I'm pretty sure it's he has sex with the chicken and then cleans it and then cooks it and eats it.
Which one's worse?
I don't think it really
Better than-
matters. You're
I think-
splitting hairs.
I think
really.
the chicken should be
Or
dead.
splitting
before you-
chickens.
I mean, well, yeah, the chicken's dead. He's just not cooked
Just
it
necrophilia.
first.
I wish I'd never brought up this example. Anyway, some other sensible arguments against surrogacy that aren't about sleeping with chickens. I just thought I'd refer to Louise Perry on this, especially because the reactionary feminists and Christians have an interesting overlap here, particularly because some of these women have had children, like Louise, so she knows exactly how this process doesn't just make a baby, it also makes a mother. She writes here, there remains a profound problem with surrogacy, even in its free range and organic form, as in the consent-based morality form. I love that framing.
But you let the mums roam free on
Yeah.
the farm.
Yeah, everyone's consenting, right? No. It deliberately breaks apart an essential human relationship, arguably the foundational human relationship. One typical guide for commissioning parents details the need to engineer an emotional transfer when a child is born by surrogacy. The handing over of a baby is the whole point of the exercise, the act for which the surrogate is actually employed. And when she is separated from the baby that has lived inside her body for his or her entire existence, there is a risk, as the industry guide acknowledges, of psychological complications. In the UK, it is illegal for a dog breeder to permanently separate a puppy from its mother if it's under 8 weeks old. But the surrogacy industry has no such limits placed on it.
Yeah, do you ever think if you're having to write guidelines of how to brainwash a mother into happily handing over her newborn child to a couple of strangers, do you ever think if you're writing out guidelines for how that works, you stop and think to yourself, am I a horrible person?
Are we the baddies?
Are we the baddies?
This might be a moment for self-reflection. What were you giggling at?
I was imagining if well, it's bestiality to do it before.
Okay,
If
you
you do
can
it
stop being a
after,
child now.
Could the-
Stop.
No, I was,
Callum,
I was
Callum, stop
wondering.
it.
God,
Stop it.
just
Callum,
imagine
Callum,
it's
you're
the
derailing.
wall.
Callum, stop. Bit much.
I just want to see.
Stop. Come on. Right, anyway, so this ended up developing because Ben Zeisloft, who is a self-described Christian nationalist who used to work for the Daily Wire until he said some things about pride that got him in trouble, he pointed out that this is Guy Benson and also Dave Rubin, who is friends with a lot of people on the conservative right, did the same thing. Now, he framed it in Christian terms because he's a Christian nationalist, so of course he did. This raised a lot of ire. Now, a lot of people might go, well, don't attack Dave Rubin. He hasn't done anything wrong. There was a National Review article that contrasted his announcement with a statement from his book, Don't Burn This Book. And I just want to read a little passage here. It's a touching pronatal message, that is, until you read the section on abortion in Rubin's book, where he reveals that he and his family had collectively decided that they would terminate the pregnancy if they discovered a severe disability. This immediately follows a paragraph affirming abortion as a right of women. Significantly, in all the talk of how heavy and difficult it would be for Rubin to abort his hypothetical disabled child, there is no mention of how the invisible woman carrying his child might feel, or how she, too, might wrestle with the consequences for years to come. So not only are they trying to genetically design their child, like the prior gay couple, but also there's absolutely no mention of how the woman might emotionally react if the Rubins decided to tell her to terminate the child because it might come out with Down syndrome or
So
something.
pressure the woman, the mother, carrying the child into aborting the child because, I'm not happy with it anymore.
Well, there was a gay couple in California as well who commissioned a woman to have this done, and she was willing to give birth to the baby prematurely, but it might have complications. And she said she had to because she had developed breast cancer and the chemotherapy might threaten the life of a child. And the gay couple said, no, we don't want our genetic material in something with disabilities, so you're going to have to kill it. It's just intensely harrowing.
It sounds evil.
It is.
It sounds pretty evil.
Yeah.
You've got to murder your baby. Why? We don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
That does sound a bit evil.
Yeah, it sounds a little evil.
Have you just considered that you might be being judgmental and that there's no problem here? Because,
What's wrong with being judgmental?
Well,
Whenever anybody says you're being judgmental, the best question to ask them is, why is that a bad thing? I'm exercising judgment. That's a good thing.
Because the people that want all of their desires met don't want to feel bad by you reminding them of doing something bad. But don't
People
worry.
should feel bad for things. It makes them make better choices.
But what if the woman involved just consented? What's the issue? You need to find better hills to die on so you stop losing, Harry. Did you know you're losing politically if women don't become gestational chambers and you don't abort disabled babies?
Well, okay? If you want to label this conservative,
Winning look like.
I was going to say maybe it is conservative in a sense because conservatives
Yes.
love to conserve the left.
Yeah.
How is this moral? How is this? If you want to consider yourself right wing, how is this remotely right wing? This is.
I don't care if it's right wing
Yeah.
or conservative. It's just fucking evil. It's just listening to it. It's
How
just
is
like,
this
well,
a
that's
good thing?
But
clearly evil. I
This
don't care
is-
what perception you come from.
The reason I decided to frame it as I did at the start. is
Standing over the
because
altar. Look, the child said it's okay.
the mother consented, as the Aztecs say. The reason I decided to frame it this way is because there's a clear bifurcation, which I think is based on the American conservative tradition. And that is that the Americans are kind of conserving a propositional liberalism if they're not Christians.
I don't think that this is what the founding fathers intended America
No.
to be.
No, but if you take out the Christian building blocks of the Constitution, then it becomes a sort of consent-based, rights-based morality. And so if the material conditions of the time change, then you're going to have a pretty difficult argument not arguing for the positive rights if a thing can be done and it's natural now. So this is the contention in the conservative sphere.
I like the idea that it's Amendment 1.5. We affirm the natural right of every gay man to buy a child off of a poor, poverty-stricken woman.
That's what the conservatives, the liberal side, are arguing.
I don't know. It came naturally.
If you oppose this, apparently, according to another gay conservative, Chad Felix Green, every so often social conservatives decide to have a good old-fashioned revival of 1980s family values. Well, we've moved 30 years.
Yeah, only in the 1980s did they care about this.
Out of the ether, all of these white picket fences emerged. It's not like that's when the divorce rate started going up.
This was an explicit plank of Reagan's policy, if I remember.
Yes, quite.
Nothing to do with you being, you want to be some gay guys, that's fine. You want to adopt a kid, that's fine. Like, all of that ground is already there. They literally just, should I be able to buy a baby? Maybe not. Maybe that's bad.
Yeah, you would think so. But have you considered that you're just a moralizer? Because Richard Hanania...
Oh, my favourite.
Yeah, you've been reading his book, haven't you?
It was really boring. I stopped.
Right. Well, that explains his tweets.
I'm sorry, he's not a good writer. There's a way to write detailed explanations of legal movements in a way that doesn't bore you to tears.
So I'm only going to assume, because I haven't read his book, that he's not the brightest bulb on the planet, because he writes all of his straw man arguments like a 13-year-old Reddit atheist. So here he says, imagine believing in a god that has this as his concern, like he's sitting in the clouds, reading scientific journals, getting angry that they invented IVF and now gays can have kids. Mad they found a loophole to subvert his plan and make parenting for straights only. Now, if Milton Satan had wrote that tweet, I might be able to believe it, because the entire point of that is rebelling against natural law and creation, to stick it to God.
I mean, scientists also invented the nuclear bomb. Am I supposed to be happy about that? That was such a good thing.
Well, it uses the natural elements, and therefore it's natural, and therefore we should do it, and therefore it's okay.
Okay, all right. No.
There we go. Nope, I know, mental position, but there you go. He also says, let me try to understand the social composition of reproductive issues. Abortion should be banned so poor people can be forced to give birth.
Nobody forced them to have sex in the first place, unless, of course, you're talking about rape. But then once again, you think you've got to ask the question of there is now a third party involved, which is the child itself.
Also, forced birth. Okay, where does the baby go? It's got to come out at some point. Can't just stay in there forever until it's like 14.
And this seems like the sort of reasoning that leads to, what's his name from the Surfs when he was
Lance on Timcast. Yeah.
Lance from Timcast when he was saying that, well, when Tim said, well, if it's far enough along the baby can survive out of the womb, why do you have to kill it? And Lance just couldn't get that through his head, that you can actually perform an emergency C-section to remove the baby without killing it. So past a certain point, abortion is completely unnecessary, even if the mother doesn't want the child, because you're still going to have surgery one way or the other to remove the baby from the body.
But then he also said the mother can't take meth because that's intentionally harming the baby.
It's a thoroughly confused worldview.
Yeah. But IVF and surrogacy should also be banned to prevent smart and successful people from reproducing. Right, because smart and successful people, they can't figure out how to do it the old-fashioned way. Just lost the time. It's like the Library of Alexandria, bonking. So what they need to do is create petri dish embryos and have them inserted into them via a turkey baster or something until they're good and ready. That makes perfect sense. That's a logical and coherent argument. He says the same thing. He actually brings up bio-Leninism, and he said that basically nothing liberals believe is as bio-Leninist as the anti-surrogacy position. I mean, I don't.
People who otherwise would be genetic dead ends, to put it bluntly.
Yep.
That's what bio-Leninism is, right?
I mean, bio-Leninism is dysgenics being put in positions of power. But yeah, people who wouldn't be able to procreate otherwise, taking advantage of unnatural means to have children that they wouldn't have been able to prior to the Industrial Revolution. That's the definition of bio-Leninism.
Yeah, but that's just stopping smart people having kids. Apparently. Yeah, I don't really follow that one at all. I also would just point them out to the celebrity women that use surrogates because they make money off their body, like the Kardashians. I don't think they're towering intellects. I think that might be a touch of a weak argument.
Where did the Kardashians come into this?
So Khloe Kardashian a little while ago had a baby via surrogate. Like they've had lots of children via surrogate. So if he's saying that only the intelligent,
let me guess, is this because they all have modeling careers
Yes.
and don't want to ruin their model?
Yeah. So it's nothing to do with their intellect. This is the kind of celebrity women that are using it. So Hananya's argument that it's actually just stopping smart people from having babies. I don't think the Kardashians are the brightest bulbs on the planet.
We're not even dealing with just homosexuality here. Like, we're dealing with people who just want to buy a baby.
Yes. Yeah, they're cosmetic and superficial. Like the lowest common denominator, pampered person. It's a vanity project. Yeah. So someone asked Hananya, what exactly is your moral foundation for all of this? Because he had an exchange with a woman who essentially lent on the idea of Imago Dei, as in, like, you're made in the image of God, therefore you have a bodily autonomy that is not, you've got to be grateful for it. You can't just do whatever you want with your body and defy that. And he was saying, okay, so you're falling back on religious dogma. And someone said, okay, well, her base is natural law. What's yours? And he said, utilitarianism plus liberty. Basically,
That's not morality.
no, I want to be free. I want this thing. I want this thing despite the consequences. And therefore, all of civilization must be reformatted so each person can get the thing they want without relying on anyone and without caring if anyone gets hurt in the process. Very moral. Nice one, Richard. Excuse me if I don't have to listen to you. Anyway, or there was also some right-wing podcast host who hosts Based Politics with a gay libertarian who wanted to sleep with Justin Trudeau, who decided to say, actually, Ben Zeisloft, you can't judge anyone because Christianity is about free choice. And if you make laws prohibiting anything, it actually stops people from being Christians because you have to be free to be a Christian. So, checkmate.
No, maybe Catholics had it right on who should be allowed to interpret the Bible and who shouldn't. I mean, God damn. I don't want to say I that felt dirty coming out, but you know.
Oh, that's not worked either, in my opinion. But
No, I suppose so. But
Well, they try and deliberately use your own framing and your own standards to make you concede to their position.
well, they also seem to take an absolutist stance on anything. Oh, you believe that freedom is good and that liberty is good? Well, you're going to have to believe that literally everything that can be vaguely defined as free and liberty must be good. No, there are lines that we can draw in the sand based on common sense, which is that when things start to pass over into the realm of evil, that's a bad thing. That's, when all of a sudden you start to draw up guidelines of how you can emotionally disconnect a mother from her newborn so that it can be handed off to random people. Maybe that's where I'm going to draw the line.
Yeah, if you're deliberately stealing a mother from her child, you might be in the wrong.
And you can apply this to other things. I say eating meat is a good thing. And then somebody goes, oh, so you should eat all of the meat in the world all at once? No, because I would die. There's a line that you can draw there.
I heard that one before.
But also, you don't even need to make a Christian argument for this. You can just say, okay, you are deliberately developmentally disadvantaging a child by robbing it from its parents. And the child cannot consent or cannot rationalize things. And a child actually, unlike an adult, has a positive right to being protected by the adults who created it. And crossing over into adulthood is when you lose those positive rights and start taking on responsibilities to people who are dependent. So you could just say, this is an evil and awful thing. But no, she just wants this consequence because she's obsessed with the idea of autonomy at all costs and therefore tries to bastardize Christian scripture in order to justify it. Ben just did a rebuttal here, and he did a scripture-based rebuttal that you can read in your own time, but I think it boils down to a contention within the American conservative movement that you cannot reconcile based on all these principles. And this is one of the Christian nationalist guys, William Wolfe, that we actually covered when we did our Christian nationalism conversation. He says, the debates over surrogacy and marriage come down to this. Either you believe Genesis 1:27-28, so man and woman were made in the image of God, or you don't. This is a debate as a clash of worldviews, one in which mankind has been created by an infinitely wise God fashioned by his hand, etc., versus one in which mankind can aspire to be his own God and use whatever technological means he dreams up to remake himself and reproduce himself according to his own designs and for whatever end he sees fit. These are irreconcilable belief systems. The first leads to flourishing in death, the second to deformity, flourishing in life, the second to deformity and death. And so I raise this because, one, the anti-woke coalition is continually fractioning as the right gets more wins legislatively, and two, I think the Imago Dei position here, which I don't think the liberals and libertarians without Christianity as a dimension have an answer to, is stronger when combating things like surrogacy or transgenderism, because the shore on which they stand to make their argument, the evidence, the science, can't be eroded by technology just getting better over time. You're screwing up your face.
Chat is being dirty.
Right, lovely. Okay, well, ignore chat then. So I'll round that off with deliberately designing a child to be deprived of their mother is evil and awful, and we should ban it. And there isn't a free market solution to this. Actually, there are higher principles than just freedom alone. Freedom is a process by which you pursue the good, and I don't think it's good to have a child grow up without his mother, just as it isn't without his father. So.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the premium book clubs, this one on Caitlin Moran's What About Men. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.